Suppose for a minute that you know exactly what you want to accomplish in life. You know you want to get a good education. You want to have a successful career. You know you want to make some profitable investments. You know you want to raise a family and have your children turn out well. You may even know how you want to go about achieving these objectives. You may have it all planned out in great detail. All that is very important. All that is very good. But is it enough? I'm afraid not. Because let's suppose that there's a vast, hugely powerful force that nobody can withstand. And this immense force is always active and in furious motion. It never rests. It's like a slowly flowing river that can eventually carve the Grand Canyon out of solid rock. But that comparison doesn't really do it justice. The force I'm talking about is much more formidable than any river or ocean or glacier or any other natural phenomenon. Now, in trying to achieve your life's goals, would you prefer to fight against this great force? Would you want to struggle against this mighty power that has all the odds overwhelmingly in its favor? Or would you rather enlist this great power in your cause and make the inevitable work for you instead of against you? Take your time before answering. Think it over. By the way, time is that great power I'm talking about. Time is the mightiest force in the world, or even in the universe. Of course, the answer to the question I posed is very obvious. Why would you ever choose to fight time when you could have time on your side? Who wouldn't want to harness the great river of time that flows through all of life? Why wouldn't you want to use the power of time to generate power in every area of your existence, to turn the turbines of your hopes and dreams, to charge your every aspiration with lightning bolts of electricity? Well, there is only one way to make time work for you, not against you, and that's with patience.
Here's a good book. It's called How to Read a Book. Good title, How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler. In this book, How to Read a Book, Mortimer, you know, is the chief editor of the new Encyclopedia Britannica. A good set of books, right, to have in your library. Encyclopedia Britannica, chief editor, Mortimer Adler. He's in his 80s. Still active, still writing books. I've got several of his books. The 6 Great Ideas, a lot of books. Mortimer Adler. But he wrote this book, How to Read a Book. Now, in this book, How to Read a Book, not only does he give you some good suggestions on how to get the most out of a book. It's one thing to read it, it's another thing to get the best out of it. He'll give you some techniques on how to get the best out of a book. It's very good. But here's what's also in his book, How to Read a Book, a list of what he calls the best writings ever written. The best writings ever written. I've used it as a centerpiece for my library. So I'm just asking you, take a look. If it suits you, fine. If it doesn't suit you, hey, keep looking till you find something to suit you. But well balanced. Let me give you some of that balance. Number 1, history. You've all got to have a sense of history. American history, national history, international history, family history, political history. We all need a sense of history. Shortest history lesson. Opportunity makes difficult. No matter how far back you go, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, feeling it all reads the same. Once you understand the thread that it isn't going to change, and what's going to change for my life? Answers. Looks like I'm going to have to change. History helps us to understand how it is, what there is to work with, seed, soil, sunshine, rain, and what human beings have done with it in the past. And how many of them have, like I did by age 25, they have messed up. That's what history is for. Be a good student of history. Identification. You've got to identify with the sorrow by recalling your own sorrow. Identify with the joy by recalling your own joy. Identify with the difficulty by rehearsing your own difficulty. Here's one of the best clues in learning to better identify. Go back over your own life and make a study of your own life, your circumstances, your feelings, your awareness. Some of the stories you haven't told for a long time. Some of the experiences you've had. Now, sometimes when you've freshly come from an experience, it isn't that easy to translate it and it isn't that easy to talk about it. But as the time passes and you can take a more thoughtful approach to your experiences, the key is not to lose the intensity of it, but to become more educated in using the intensity of your experiences to weave into the next conversation. And by the gift of language and emotion, touch somebody's life, reach somebody, affect somebody, persuade somebody. Identification. Very important subject. Here's the next part of a good presentation. It's what we call logic and reason. If you're trying to persuade a child, talk to a child, or talk to an audience, or if you're trying to talk to a customer, part of any presentation is the logical part, the facts and the figures, the numbers and the dimensions. And we won't linger too long here, because here's my point on logic and reason. It's got to be brief. We need some facts, but only enough facts to start the decision-making process. You got to beware not to cover too many facts. I'm sure we've all heard the expression, it's possible to talk somebody into buying, keep on talking, talk them out of buying. Here's where this problem usually occurs. Even if it's a child, you can talk a child into deciding, and then you keep on talking, and then they undecide. We talk past, too much logic, too much reason. We need just enough logic and reason so that it starts to make sense, not so that you understand it all.
You had the dream that you could be something in life and do something in life. If you don't dream it, you can't become it.
I think my imagination has always kept me going. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, just imagine myself collecting awards. Just imagine myself, you know what I mean, getting big parts. Imagine myself working with great actors. My imagination was the one, like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, when you're not overthinking, you're just kind of like, and I get that. You know what I mean? That's part of my inner magic. Is that actually, if I can see myself doing it.
If you really have a drive and you really put your heart and soul into something, you can really make anything happen. I'm a true believer in that.
I realize that to have the level of success that I want to have, it's difficult to spread it out and do multiple things. You know, it's in order to be world class, and I've made a decision, I want to be world class. It takes such a desperate, obsessive focus to excel on the level that I want to make movies. Really got to focus with all of your fiber and all of your heart and all of your creativity.
I have standards. I have value. It's easy to go through life holding on to things that are weighing us down. Guilt, resentment, doubt, worry. The problem is when we allow these things in, they're taking up space for the good things that should be there. Imagine your life is like a container. You were created to be filled with joy, peace, confidence, creativity. But if you allow worry in, it pushes out the peace. There's not space for both. You can't go above 100%. You have a limited amount of room. If you allow guilt to take up space, that's space that you don't have for the confidence you need. Some people don't enjoy their lives is because their container, their heart is contaminated with so many things. They have 10% worried, stressed out over their job, 12% bitterness, mad at their neighbor, 20% guilt, beating themselves up for past mistakes, 9% jealousy, their coworker is more beautiful. They don't realize 70% of their container is negative. How much space are you given to guilt, to shame, to regret, to being against yourself? Whatever it is, it's too much. Give no place to guilt. Give no place to worry. Give no place to bitterness. It can't come in and automatically take over. You control what's in your container. You control what you think about, what you choose to allow in.
Create your own reality by choosing your future. And not only is it important for you to know it's possible for you to choose your future, but it's necessary that you work on yourself, that you develop yourself. It's necessary that you get the energy drainers out of your life, people who don't want anything.
The most powerful motivational speeches that I have ever heard came from people who told me I couldn't do something. You know why? Because when they told me I couldn't do it, I was bound and determined to show them that I could. Tell me I can't do it. I will prove you wrong. I will show you that you're mistaken, because I believe, and this is real important, I can't, will thwart you, will stop you, will slow you down, will turn you around and cause you to move backwards if you let it. But if you have the proper mindset, I can't, will do nothing but make you that more determined.
It is the thing that we cannot do. And because it is that, we must do that. Once fear is acted upon, the death of fear is certain. So what volcano you have in your life? Let me ask you some questions here. If you had 6 months to live, what would you do differently with your life? What would you do differently? Would you have the same job? Would you be worried about things that you're worried about right now? Would you have the same relationships? Would you have the same people in your life? I was sitting on the House of the Ohio legislative floor. I'd just been elected for the 3rd time as the chairman of the Human Resource Committee, powerful, prestigious position, and I was reading a book on how to manage your time in your life, and it talked about what are your long-range goals 2 to 3 years from now, what are your short-range goals, 6 months goals, and then it said, if you had 3 months to live, what would you spend your time doing? So I wrote down I would spend my time, one thing, I would resign from the legislature, I would go back to Miami, and I would buy my mother home, something I'd promised myself that I was going to do, and I had continued to procrastinate and put all kind of reasons why I couldn't do it. And I wanted to make sure that she was financially secure, my children would be financially secure, and I would do lectures, and I would go around talking to people and working with kids. That's what I said I would do. Then it turned to the next page and it said, for all you know, you don't have 3 months to live. You might die today. So whatever you wrote on the last page, you want to spend as much of your time doing that today. So I looked at Mr. Vern Rife, the Speaker of the Ohio Legislature, and I said to the guy on my right, State Representative Mike Stenziano out of the Ohio State District, I said, Stenzi, 25 years from now, who would care what legislation we passed? He said, nobody would care 1 year from now. Now here's what was happening with me. I came to the Ohio legislature with great expectations. There are things I wanted to do. I wanted to make a change in society. I wanted to make an impact. But I was just disillusioned after being there for a while. I introduced some legislation that I'd worked months to get this legislation passed, got it out of subcommittee, voted to the major committee, and then went from there to the reference committee, and then they introduced it on the Ohio legislative floor. And this legislation was designed to provide protection for senior citizens and poor people who bought money orders. People buy money orders thinking that it's cash. But what they did not know, that there's no bond or insurance security in the event that the money order company files bankruptcy. And so this company filed bankruptcy and just left a lot of people just holding worthless paper. So I wanted to introduce some legislation so that senior citizens would not be victims of this anymore. After months of hard work, after introducing the bill and having the votes lined up, guy raised his hand. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Wright said yes. He said, I'd like to introduce an amendment for Mr. Brown's bill. He said, we will hear the amendment. He said, I'd like to amend. And change the word shall to may. I said, excuse me, Mr. Speaker, may I speak, please? Yes. I said, ladies and gentlemen of the Ohio legislature, this legislation is not something we wanted to make it optional to provide protection for Ohioans and senior citizens. We want to make it mandatory. And then this guy said, no, Mr. Speaker, I just think that he's taking it a little too far. This is an honorable gesture on behalf of the state, but he's taking it too far. Let's make it optional and leave it up to the goodwill of these money order companies to provide for the protection. Let's have the vote. And they had the vote, and I lost. And I said, oh, wait, this is not why I came here. And then all of a sudden, this job that at one point had meaning to me and value, it no longer had that for me. And all of us have had some experiences where you went to a job and you were excited about that job. Boy, it had so much promise, and then you got there, and so much you wanted to do. You thought it was an opportunity for upward mobility and growth and development and expansion. And all of a sudden, after you got there, you found out it was nothing but a glorified cubby hole. Old grave with no dirt on it. So it became very depressing going to work. And so that's what happened to this guy, Joe. And a lot of us have done that before. I used to get my headache start throbbing on Sunday afternoon after the Sunday afternoon football game, a basketball game. I just hated to go to work. Some days I just drive by just for nothing, just drive on by.